fantastically.
Sorry.
That's all right. I forgot to do it. It's a fantastically rewarding thing to be able to do, is to learn different textile skills for lots of different reasons, which we could go into, but we won't here because we're here just to have fun. I will let Nicky take over here because it's her night, and I know she's got a full night of stuff to do for you to do. So I'll hand over to Nicky.
Hi everybody. I know there's people still coming in. I hope you're all well. It's pretty miserable out there. I assume it's miserable where you are too, because it's certainly miserable here and cold. So it's nice to be tucked up cozy and to do something enjoyable, hopefully. I'm going to go on to a presentation just in a minute, just to show you and go through a couple of bits and pieces with you. So I'm just going to share the screen. Hopefully you can all see that screen. So welcome to the Textile Skills Centre. If you don't know us, by the end of the hour, you will know us. Yeah. And obviously we've got some people on here that we know pretty well, and hopefully a lot of new people that we'll be introduced to. So this is an American smocking taster. This was something that I did with my mum when I was very, very young in the 70s. Obviously, a lot of you weren't alive then because you're all so young, but I was around in the 70s. In fact, isn't they going to land on the moon tonight? That was the last time in the 70s, if any of you were around. But that's beside the point. American smocking is a fabric technique that is done by hand with a needle and thread, and that's what makes it so amazing, that you don't actually have to get a machine out. Obviously you do need fabric, but it's mostly done with a needle and thread. And I'm going to work you through the stages of doing some practice sampling, so you can all go away and do some amazing things and then send them all back to us on Instagram. So you're going to need a piece of fabric. I know you will all have prepared this, but if you've got a piece of white fabric, that's best. But if you haven't, it doesn't really matter what your fabric is. This is just a tester. You're going to need a needle and thread. Doesn't matter what color at this stage, anything will do. I'm going to do mine in black so that you can see it under the camera, but anything will do at this stage. A pair of scissors, preferably. You do need a ruler of some description or something that you can measure with. Some of you might be able to trace over the template that I've given you. Others will need to draw out the template. So we might be at different stages when we go through this. And a pencil. And I will go through what you can use alternatively to a pencil. You can, you don't have to have tailor's chalk, but that's amazing if you do. You could just have a coloured pencil. Most people will just use a coloured pencil because that's cheaper. So what you're going to need to start is a small scrap of fabric, because what we're going to do at the beginning is we're going to test out the stitches, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Once we've tested out the stitches, you're going to be all singing, all dancing, thinking to yourself, is that it? Mostly, that is it. So we will do that somewhere near the beginning. And that's your template. So for those that can't print, there is a I will leave the template on the screen at some point. If it's not on the screen, I will leave it under my camera, because we're going to be flicking from looking at me, which I know will all be disappointed when we flick to the camera and see all the what I'm doing underneath the camera. So I'll explain that in a minute. And just to go through with you very quickly, this is the main course is one of our online short courses, and we're building up all our online short courses, which are, for anybody to do. It doesn't just have to be teachers, but they are, within them, they have video tutorials and they go through everything step by step, and there's step-by-step guides. And the advantage of them being online is that you can stop them at any point and go back. They last forever. So the discount's not going to last forever, but the course lasts forever. So if you want to use it again and again and again, you can. If you're a teacher, you can use it in your classroom and show the videos to your students. But we've got a 10% online discount for that course, which is Smocking 10 in caps. but I go back to that as well, and Dawn will remind you of that later. But we have lots of other courses. We've got Introduction to Freehand Machine Embroidery, Creating Repeat Patterns. Coming very soon is Dissolvable Fabric, where you can make sort of these 3D shapes here, which I've done. That's actually going up on very, very soon. And coming fairly soon is doing artwork with Wonderweb, because I've got a workshop at the Stitch Festival with that this in March. And then those are some of our other short courses as well, lots of pattern cutting courses, drawing courses, and the ones that I've mentioned in there. All right, are you all with me so far? Super duper. Right, I'm going to go over to the camera now and show you some bits and pieces.
Just so that you know, I've put the link to the American Smocking course and the discount code in the chat. So if you want those, they're in the chat. And if you have any questions for Nicky, you can ask her during this hour tonight, or you can ask in the chat, or ask once she's finished.
Just shout out to me, that's fine. So we're over on the camera. I'm just going to show you some American Smocking samples. That's called the V. They've all got sort of funny names. I've just given them funny names, but you can see the 3D effect there. Just thought I'd show you a few. These have been done with an organza. The great thing about the organza is that it's fairly hard and stiff, so it's quite easy to sew, but also that the shape stands up quite a lot. So that 3D, I don't know if you can see that there, does sort of stand quite well. Yeah. Another one. That's the lozenge. That one's used a lot for fashion. Not quite sure why, not one that I choose for fashion, but it is used a lot in designers. That's the waves. It's called arches, that one, but it looks like it goes in waves. But also an arch. And you can just get the 3D effect there. You can see that. All of these will be on the full course. That's the lozenge done on a very, very bright orange. Doesn't look so bright on your screen, but I have Fiona with me tonight, and Fiona will vouch that that is very bright, isn't it? It doesn't quite come out so bright on your screen, but that's a very long piece. You can see me doing that. That's another long piece there. This is the flower one. You can see it looks like a flower. It's the only one that's worked from two sides. Most of the other ones are all worked from the back, but I'll explain that when we go along. This one's done on a lightweight denim. It's called the rope. And this one doesn't look very velvety under the camera. It looks grey, but in fact it's a black velvet. This is how I remember my mum doing this technique in the 70s. It was always done on like a plush velvet used for cushions. Yeah, and there is always a resurgence of doing that for cushions. That's really lovely. You can't get the texture on there, but it is very beautiful texture. And then this is the one that we're going to do tonight. It is the most popular one. And that is the weave. But we're just going to do a sample. So that's on a satin. Obviously the satin does make the 3D effect look good. It shines it up. But that's really lovely. And you can see the way it moves. So you can see my finger in there. And just so you know, that's what the back looks like. That's how neat it should be. It doesn't always look like that, but you're working from the back. You're never working from the front. You're always working from the back of the fabric. And it's very, very easy to see if you make a mistake because you can see that the pattern changes from the back, and you don't see the pattern building up until you are working and turning to the front. But that's what we're going to be doing tonight. All right. Are you all with me? Yeah. Okay, we're going to start. So we're going to be doing some small samples. So I always do a small sample like this. That's the weave one there. And on any scrap of fabric before I do the big one, so that I know these are all the different designs. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I've practiced it. I've practiced the size, because there are mostly only about 3 different sizes. You can go a lot bigger, but if you go bigger than 4 centimeters, it's going to be too 3D. So there's really a 2 centimeter, a 3 centimeter, a 4 centimeter square, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. But always do a practice sample, and it's always a way of working out also how much the design is going to shrink, because obviously once you've gathered, it's going to shrink in. All right. Hopefully you're all with me. Hopefully you're all understanding what I'm saying. Because you're not answering back, because obviously you're all on mute. So we're going to start off with a little piece of fabric like this. Okay. And I want you to draw, I've done yours for you, Fiona. I want you to draw 4 lines, a solid line, a dash line, a solid line, and a dash line. Mine are about 4 centimeters long. So it's a 4 centimeter solid line, 4 centimeter dashed, 4 centimeter solid, 4 centimeter dashed. And this will be the back of your fabric. And if you want to mark out slip, gather, that's fine, because that's what we're going to call our stitches. Basically, the slip stitch is a long running stitch, and this is a gather. Obviously, it's gather, a long running stitch, and a gather. And those are the 2 main stitches that you will be doing in every single American smocking pattern that you do. I'm just going to give you just a couple of minutes just to draw that up. You can do it on paper. You can do it on anything. It's just as a practice to understand the 2 main stitches. So you come on, look. So needle and thread. I'm going to use black because you can see it, basically, so you can see what I'm doing. But for the practice, it doesn't really matter. You can have red, pink, purple, whatever it is that you've got available. When you're doing the real thing, you're going to want to match the cotton to your fabric. So hopefully it's not going to show through much, because we're going to do tiny weeny stitches, but it will show through a little bit. Okay. I always do a double length and tie a knot at the end, always, because we're gathering, and rather than actually gathering twice, it's better if you've got a double length of fabric, a thread, sorry. I confuse you there. Hopefully I'll do this without getting it all knotted up. A little knot on the end, but you can always cut that down. Okay. I'm now going to demo for you. So I always work from left to right. It doesn't really matter if you work from right to left, but majority of the designs that you'll get will always be horizontal, working horizontal. There is one that works vertically, and I've actually got arrows on the templates when you see that, but the majority of American smocking designs do work horizontally. And I always work from one end to the other, stop, and go back to the other end. And you'll find when you do quite a few, there's a reason for that. It's the way that some of the patterns are done. I find it easier to go back to the beginning, because you'll see the pattern that we're using. The next line up is different, and it's easier if you just not cut off at the end and go back to the beginning line. So your templates are going to have the ones that if you do the course, will have a solid and a dash line. That's not always what we use, but I'll explain a bit further on that when we get into doing it. But for me, a solid and a dash line is easy to look at. And you will have a dot where the grid meets. and the dot is where you pick up the stitch. And you're always, always, always working from the back of the fabric. In fact, you don't see the front of the fabric unless you turn it over. You're not going to work at all from the front. So you're going to start at this end and you're going to take a tiny stitch on that dot and pull it through. I'm going very slowly. If you want to go faster, you're very, very welcome. Then you're going to go to the next dot. Now this is a slip, as I call it, or a running stitch. You're not pulling that, you're just leaving that. You're not pulling it at all. So what you're going to do next is you're going to take another stitch just on that same one that you just did and pull. And the reason that you're putting an extra stitch in there is to make sure that when you're doing your design that that piece doesn't pull. It doesn't gather up. Now you're going to do the gather one. So you're going to the next dot. And you're going to gather those two together. So you're going to pull from here and gather those two together. And then if you hold, Fiona's, that's it, you've got it, pull it through. So I've got Fiona with me, doing it with me. She's my my tester. She never used the needle and thread before, so she's my tester. Yeah. Then you're going to take another stitch over the top of those two. And there's two ways of doing this. You're going to take a stitch and do a knot. You can take the thread around the needle and pull it through, and that should hold your gather in place. If not, just do a stitch or two if you haven't pulled it through the hoop. I'll do a different way on the other one. Now we're going to do a slip stitch again, or a long running stitch. So we're going to go to the next one and just take a stitch. And don't pull. And then on that dot where we've already been, we're just going to take another tiny little stitch just to hold that in place. So basically, the reason you're taking a double stitch is that that will hold when you do your design and it won't gather up. Okay. Now we're going to gather the next two, and I'm going to do a different way of knotting it. So you can take the last dot and you're going to pull those two together. This is a gather one. And then take a stitch over the top. And this time, I'm going to take my needle through the hoop. And that will hold the knot. On really, really heavier fabrics, you might want to do that twice, but that does take quite a while. It should hold. And those are your two stitches. And that's all you need to know. So you've got a slip stitch, which is a long running stitch. And that's the stitch that takes you between the two gathers. And it's easier to do that than cutting off and doing a new knot at the end of your thread every single time. So it takes you from one gather to the next gather. Hopefully that does make sense. Fiona's looks like mine, which is amazing. So hopefully yours looks like that too. And that is just a practice. You can do that 3 or 4 times if you want to as a practice. Then cut off your thread because you're going to use that on your bigger piece. Okay. Right. Some of you will have printed this template out. That's the one, hopefully, that you should have received. I will put it on the screen anyway if you haven't received it. And some of you will be able to lay your fabric over the top, and you'll be able to see the template through. If you can see the template through, that is amazing. That's very quick. And all you need to do, so if we look at the template, it's very hard to see there, but if I do it close, the template is a series of slips and gathers, but diagonally, not straight. It's not going to be that easy, folks, okay? But if we look at the pattern, the first line is a slip, gather, slip, gather, slip, gather, slip, gather. So it's very simple in terms of exactly what we've just done, slip and gather. But the next row starts with a gather, slip, gather, slip. So this every second row is slightly different. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so for some of you, if you can trace your design through and take your pencil. It might be easier for you to mark on the dots. And the reason for marking on the dots is that that's where you actually pick the stitch up. And then you can actually trace through and just put the lines on. So you can put a solid line and a dash line. You don't really need a pencil to do, a ruler to do that. You can just do that yourself, joining the dots, as long as you put the dots on the fabric, okay? If you cannot see through, unfortunately, this does get a little bit more complicated. You can use the bigger one, because it's easier. So what I've done is I've made a bigger one. You can make it whatever size you want. So this one is the small one that you've had. If you directly printed it with A4, I think it's about a 2 centimetre, 2.5 centimetre. So basically, it's 2.5 centimetres between each dot. This one is a 4 centimetre, and when you saw the grey satin, that was a 4 centimetre. So each of these squares is a 4 centimetre square. So 4 centimetres horizontally and 4 centimetres vertically. I make a bigger one up to the size that I want to do, not necessarily to trace it always, but to have that in front of me so I can see it as I'm going along. And what I often do is I tick off. So I'll put one, I'll do a sort of a timer thing, tick off one row that I've done. And then when I go to the next row, I tick off again. So I know how many rows I'm doing because I've done some very big. If you have a dark piece of fabric, you are going to have to use a ruler and measure up along the side of the fabric. So you're going to have to actually, on the back, if you're doing, say, a 4 centimetre gap, you're going to have to go along the fabric 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 and measure up and do a grid onto the back of your fabric. Just going to do another line here. And then you're going to, once you've done that, and even if you don't have a ruler, you can just do it roughly for the moment. And you're going to have to make yourself a grid onto the back of your fabric. This is the boring bit, I'm afraid. Yeah, there's always a little bit of a boring bit. And then when you've made a grid like that, I'm doing it on a piece of paper, but you're doing it on fabric just to show you. Can you see that grid? In between that grid is going to be your dots. These are all going to be your where you pick up your stitch, just as you had on your little sample. And then this was your fabric. You're going to draw in your lines, and you don't really need to do that with a ruler, because remember, that's going to be a stitch from here to here. You're not following a straight line. Doesn't have to be a perfect straight line. You can just draw on the back. Most fabrics you'll be able to draw on the back with a pencil, but if you can't draw on the back with a pencil, then you can always use a coloured pencil. I mean, I do have, obviously, because I do a lot of sewing, I do have dressmakers pencils. So rather sometimes than do solid and dash lines, I might use 2 different colours. So I might do pink and blue. So I will put a note on my fabric, pink. Sorry, you can't even see that. Pink equals gather, blue equals slip. And often as a little tip on the fabric, I will put a piece of masking tape at the side, and I will put the same thing on the fabric so I don't forget what I'm doing. Because I've got to that age where I sometimes forget when I get to about row 5, I'm thinking to myself, which one's the gather and which one's the flip? Or if you're really clever and you've got all the equipment, you can use some tailor's chalk. White tailor's chalk is great for doing on the back of dark fabric, but to be honest with you, I often use a white pencil. I used to nick my daughter's white pencils and she always wondered why she never had the white ones. So a white pencil is just as good. How are you all doing? So you should be tracing up, either tracing up onto your piece of fabric or drawing up a grid and onto the back of your fabric. It's just a rough one. To be honest with you, if you don't have a ruler, just guess a little 4 centimeter gap and do it. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Time to get a cup of tea as well, if you haven't already got one. Fiona and me ordered our tea for 7:30. It's not arrived.
What's he doing?
I don't know. What is my husband doing? Oh, I think I can hear the movement in the kitchen. I'm going to put that there. Actually, what I might do is put the one on the screen because it's a lot easier to see, I think. Hi, me again. And then I'll have a look at some of the chat, see if I can answer a few questions if I've gone too quickly, which is my want, isn't it, Dawn? Normally going very quickly. So Dawn's put the code on, that's great. So the one that I showed you, the grey one, was a 4 centimeter gap. I've never gone above that because it's just too big. They bubble up way too much. And it depends on your fabric. So a velvet, if you're doing a velvet, I wouldn't do a 2 centimeter because the fabric's too thick and it doesn't work very well. And the satin that I use is very heavy. So a heavy satin, a heavy velvet, use a slightly bigger one. Yeah. Any questions, do put them in the chat for me. I will have a look. And then when you're ready, you do need to get a large needle and thread. And some of you clever ones, can start sewing. And start from the left bottom row. When the thread runs out, you have to go again, Fiona. That is the trouble. The thread will run out. But this is something, because it's hand stitching. This is something. It'll get to the end of your row because they're being gathered. This is something that you can do in front of the telly. This is something you can do in the garden. It's very therapeutic. I find it very therapeutic once you get used to it. I like the rhythm to it. I like the rhythm of the rows. And bear in mind, you can use this for furnishing. You can use it for interior furnishings, cushions. You can use it for garments. It's a way of gathering up around a waist or a shirt. Remember that you're always working from the back of your fabric. I'm going to go on to the camera so I can start a row for you. I don't actually have one. Or you've all been doing that. I haven't been drawing it up. I realise some of you are going to take a bit longer because some of you have got dark fabric. So
Some of us have never sewed.
Some of you have never sewed before. I didn't want to get into way too much complications. Do try though, as I said, you can see me doing that here, adding the dots on. If you lose your place or you lose where you're going, the dots are where you're picking up the stitch. So if you accidentally skewer that line like that or something, it doesn't matter because you've got the dots there. Remember, if you want to, right at the edge of your fabric, you can put a note here. Dash line is gather. I can't really see that very well because it's in pencil, isn't it? And remember, at the end of a slip stitch, you are still taking an extra stitch because you don't want that stitch to gather. Now, when you do your first row, you think to yourself, I've got this. I'm loving this. This is easy, or maybe not, but hopefully you think it's easy. And then you get to the second row where you've got it all gathered up and you think, oh my goodness, this is getting a little bit harder. But trust me, you're going to get used to this so quickly. And then you'll eventually not need any dashes and dots. You'll be doing it without them because you'll remember what you're doing. Okay. So if this was grey, I would use grey thread. I'm using black so that you can see what I'm doing. If you were doing a white shirting, you'd use white thread. And I'm starting at this side of the row, picking up on that dot and gathering them together. That's one. First one was a gather. And then I'm going over the top. I'm taking my, taking my needle around and pulling my knot. My next one is a slip stitch. So I'm just leaving that like that. But I'm doing an extra stitch, not a knot, just an extra stitch, just so that that doesn't pull because I don't want it to gather. Next one. So gather. Remember, this is gather, slip, gather, slip, gather, slip, gather, slip. Clickety clock, clickety clock. And this one's a gather, so I am going to do a knot. I'm taking my thread around the needle and pulling.
Nicky,
Yes.
sorry to bother you. When you get to the end,
Jane,
is that
yeah.
when we knot
So
it and then?
Yeah, do a double knot at the end, Jane.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
cut it off, then go back to where you started, next row up and start again.
Brill. Thank you.
I don't often go, I don't know, I've been doing this for a while. I don't go backwards on it. I find if I go back to the front again and start the next row, I know what I'm doing. Because they do get a little bit more complicated than this. I have tried to give you a simple one. Right, and then we're picking up a slip stitch. And then a gather. Should have put some music on, shouldn't I? So obviously, if you do a 2 centimetre or a 3 centimetre grid, you're not going to get through so much thread. And there are some where you have to do double gathers. And I think the most complicated one is probably the flower one. It's the only one I know where you have to go to the front of the fabric as well. Right, I'm at the end. And just as a surety, I'm going to need to do an extra knot. And then I'm going to cut that off. Very smooth in. And then I'm going to do another knot. Ooh, that didn't knot. Try and do another knot. And I'm going to start again. The next one up. So the next one up is different. It's a solid line. The next one up is a solid. If you want to, you'll get very used to how much thread you need for each row. The trouble is you're going to want to do a really, really long bit of thread because you're going to want it to last forever. The only problem with that is that you're going up to the ceiling every time, and when you do your knots, it gets completely tangled. So not such a good thing. There you go.
I need to do it with the needle threader.
I did loads. I miss a pad. I was a girl guide. So this is my second row.
Yours is different from mine, isn't it?
No.
Did you say yours was a slit?
Oh, I might have done
Together.
it. I might have done it differently. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you start on a slip and gather, as long as the each row is alternate on this one.
It's hard to see, like looking at this, it's going to be like that.
I know,
Well, I'm not
I know.
saying mine will
It
be,
is.
but
It's really hard to see when you get going. And having taught it, people say to me, "Oh, how many rows do I need to do?" You need to do a few rows before you see it. And I did one earlier. It was a real Peter job. That's the one I did earlier. So it does.
that's how I should look.
That's how it should look. But remember, it's just a tester for you. Not all of you are going to want a piece of white smocking. However, you could still dye it at this stage. Remember, it's stitched together. Could still throw some dye on or do a bit of marbling over the top of it. Right. So I'm at the Stitch Festival shortly on March the something 23rd, and we have 3 sets of pair tickets to give away. So the Stitch Festival is in London. I know not if you aren't in London. On the Saturday, they unfortunately do charge £5, but there you can go from, I don't know which days it is. Hold on, let me have a look at my 21st to the 24th of March. So the first 3 people to put their names in the chat, I will send a code which will give you 2 free tickets for those days. Is that the 3 names? Dawn, I'll leave you to, is that all right, Dawn, if you sort it out?
Will do, yeah. So, first 3 names, gosh. Denise, Tracy, and Sinead Steventon.
Right, I'm going to send Dawn the codes. In fact, ladies, if you could put your, have we got your emails? If you could put your
emails, as long as I've got the.
Because some people might have come on directly. We obviously, there might be 2 Denises. Could you put your email in the chat, and then Dawn will grab the email off you.
Denise, Tracy, and Sinead.
Sorry, the other ones. They only give us 3. How are you doing? Have you turned over to the other side to have a little look? Have you sneaked a peek? to see whether the pattern is forming. We've got that one there. That's what it should look like. It will do. Have faith. Have faith. I'm going to talk to you about the edges while you're sewing. So obviously all the edges all get puckered up like this, and they've got to get into a seam. So depending on the way that the design moves, you can see at the bottom of this one here, they're all going that way, and you can see the top, they're all going the other way. You'll need to fold those down and pin those down, and that will go into your seam, whether that's a cushion seam, a side seam, wherever it goes in. And I suggest you stitch over that neatly and then overlock it if you can. If not, just zigzag stitch it, and then that will lay flat to go into your seam. So if you're doing a cushion or something like that, you do need to leave a gap around the edge of your smocking for the area to lie flat. So depending on what you're doing, do not smock right to the edge. Yeah, leave yourself enough gap to put a seam on, that it goes into enough room to go into a seam.
Just looking, it is slightly forming right now.
Yeah, do the third row and you'll see it. You'll see it.
Thank you. It's harder the more you've got because it's all bunched, isn't
It
it?
starts bunching up, so it does get harder and harder. There are easier designs.
No, I like this design.
Yes,
Looks good.
it's a real favourite, this design. It always
So
looks good.
effective, isn't it? Gorgeous.
How are you all doing? Any brave soul want to show what they've done? Oh, Denise? Oh yes, there you go. There you go. Have a look at the galleries. Oh, well done, Claire, Diane, Jane. There you go. They're all forming. Well done. Tracy, can you see it forming a pattern? Oh yes, definitely. Definitely. Well done. Brave souls, well done for showing. Do you feel calm? Have you got a cup of tea? Our tea never turned up, did it?
They've fallen asleep.
Probably.
Is that?
Oh, someone's had the 11 parents evening. Oh my goodness. Oh, is that you, Claire? What a joy. Just at the time of year they were there, coming up to their exams where they should be finishing their project. Oh goodness. Used to love that parents evening. Oh, Tracy, you've had parents evening too. Must be that time of year. Tell us about your day then. Who's had a good day? I did have somebody from the NHS join up. I don't know if she's here tonight. Did you have a good day at work in your hospital? Hi, how did you have a good day? Are you a nurse? feel a bit guilty. I've stopped sewing, but I've done so many of them. Oh, yoga. Fantastic. Oh, wow. What an amazing job. If I could pronounce it, I'd tell everybody. How do you pronounce it, Dawn?
You're asking me, a prosthetist.
Prothest? How do you Yeah. How do you pronounce it? Yeah.
Prosthetics, aren't they?
Prosthetics, but oh, Dawn said it right. Well done, Dawn. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah,
It's
Dawn.
her job,
Yeah, Dawn.
but she can say it right.
Yeah. Oh, don't come on. I always compare jobs like NHS teaching, and I think, oh, why do we do them? It's because we love them.
Oh.
Yeah, I can hear action. So just to reiterate, there is a 10% discount on the full course. It's a short course, so it's not too expensive. None of our courses, I think, are too expensive. Jane, you've done them all, you should know. But it does have all the templates for all the designs. Gosh, I should know how many, shouldn't I? Quite a few. And it does have video tutorials, and it does talk about threads and fabrics and all the different things to start with, and then demos and how to do the practice stitch. You've done a lot of it tonight, but then you know, especially if you're a teacher, you're going to have those videos to show in your classroom. And then have a look at some of the other ones that we do. Sorry, I missed it, how to end the line. So when you get to the end of the line, hold on, let me go back over. Why has it not gone to my thing? Oh, it has. When you get to the end of the line, where am I? If you're at the end of the line here, that's the end of my line, just do another double stitch, just to make sure the end of the line holds well, and then cut off, and then go back to where you started again, depending on whether you started from the left or right. Some left-handed people go the other way, don't they? But go back to the other side and start again. I know people do go up to the next line and go backwards. I just find that awkward stitching that way. Don't ask me why, it just feels awkward stitching that way. I feel like I always want to stitch from left to right, if that makes sense. And as I said, I do draw up my template. It doesn't have to be this size, but it helps me visualize sometimes if it's complicated. I know I've got it on the fabric already, but it's just there for me to visualize, and then I tick off my rows, because especially if you're doing like 20 rows and your template's only got 4 or 5 on it, I can tick off which row I've done. And of course they're not all that simple. I mean, it's not a simple look, but it is one of the easier designs to do. And it's one of the most popular designs to do. But once you get well into it, you might do round cushions, or you might have you must have seen them, they sell them in, it's quite a popular thing at the moment to have these as cushions. And then you have round cushions, and also the bit around the outside is done in smocking too. I've used it for tops of skirts as well.
So
Yeah,
Dawn, sorry, Nikki, if you are left-handed, it is better to go right to left then, isn't it? Because I'm feeling a bit, getting a bit, it's fine now, but
if
when
you're
I started,
you might want to go back the other way. I've had left-handed people say they prefer still to go left to right. So yeah, a hard one. You have to do whichever you feel is easy, smooth-wise for you.
Okay, thank you.
Woo, Denise, that looks good. We had a little flicker of it there. Excellent. Well done. We've only got a few more minutes left, ladies. And we're getting on tea.
No.
Fiona's laughing. Yeah, I did. Could you do just a little bit of milk, Fiona? So you'll have to. Oh, it does happen. It does happen. So you'll have to take these away and build up your repertoire of American smocking and think what you can use it for. What do you think you will use it for, ladies? A nice cushion? Some of you, obviously, I know teachers want to teach it. A cushion's a simple thing to do. Two squares, and put a stuffing in and just sew the side up. And display. Don't let anybody lean against it though. Far too nice for that. Yeah.
There's a quilt.
Or
That's
quilt.
great.
Well, I've done. Let me show you this one. I've done one.
That would look nice in my bed.
That would look nice in your bedroom, Fiona. Let me show you this.
Beautiful.
This is box one. It's used a lot by people like M&S and people like that. They use it on duvet covers. It's much smaller than this, but I've just done it as a pillowcase. I've got some printing on the other end like that, which I'm embroidering at the moment. Sorry, that's the bit that goes underneath. And then this is the box smocking. It's a bit hard to see because it's not, but that's the box smocking, and it's a pillowcase. And if I used it as a pillowcase, obviously I wouldn't let anybody lean against it or sleep on it. It's far too nice to sleep on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for saying.
So do join us on Instagram, Textile Skills Centre. And if you haven't, please go on to the website. And if you go onto the website, you'll initially they'll ask for your details, and then you'll get newsletter just telling you about the events that we do. And we do a free event at least at the moment, at least once a month, don't we, Dawn? We normally got two a month at the moment because we've got so many that we're doing, because we're doing these taster events as well. And I'm going to be doing a taster event on starting your own sketchbook. Although I've also got a taster event for teachers on sketchbooks, which is filling up quickly. But I'm also going to do one, how to start your own inspirational sketchbook. And then we'll be doing lots and lots and lots of other tasters. But do have a look at the short courses, because they're much cheaper.
This somebody's asking about the recording. We will upload the recording. We'll send you a link out tomorrow on the recording, but we're going to upload it to our YouTube channel, on which there are lots of there's lots of tea and chat events already up there, but the Taste Textiles ones will also be up there. So this is the first one of the Taste Textiles ones that we're actually recording. So
good,
definitely be up there.
Try a jacket for a wedding. Oh, that'd be amazing. So when I've used it in garments, it depends where on the garment it goes. Oh my goodness, Aisha, that looks amazing. If I'm using it as a skirt, if you do American smocking around that part of your skirt and leave the rest, you can do it in one long piece of fabric. And basically you get where the end of the smocking comes, it hangs very nicely as a piece of the best of the skirt, sorry. The only trouble is then you've got to put a zip or something into where the American smocking is. That sometimes is quite hard. But I've seen it used down panels, down trousers. So you can do like a small panel, it'd be a panel down the side of the trouser, which is quite nice. But it is used a lot in fashion as well. Yeah, and it's used to gather in places. So instead of gathering, you're using American smocking to like gather on the waist, or panels in shirt. So let's have a show and tell, people. Just got a couple of seconds to go. They're amazing. Well done. Wow. G. Perry. Wow. Oh, I love the one on the check, Claire. That's fantastic. Well done, everybody. It is a little harder when you can't see through the template and you have to draw up your template. That does take a while. Let me show you something. I'm working on this. And this is how long the fabric is. And this is the piece on the end. So wow from Fiona there. So
That's beautiful.
so I stopped, I paused because I went on holiday and didn't take it with me. My husband would kill me. But yeah, so it's do you know what? The drawing the template took longer than the stitching. It is the bit of the boring bit, but that's the bit that has to be done, I'm afraid. But thank you very much for joining us, everybody. I hope you've had a nice little hour. It's nice and calm. Remember, it's something that should be done very calm.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. That was brilliant.
You could sublimate and put it on or print it on. That would be amazing. Thank you, ladies. Vic,
Thank you, everybody.
looks great, Vic. Well done. Is it puckered a bit?
I didn't know if it's okay on the back. So these quite long lengths. Is that
Sorry.
on the back? They've got
Yeah.
these quite long, like float sections. Is that?
That's fine. That's how it's meant to be. Unfortunately, yeah, you just need to make sure that wherever you're using it, that the back is not gonna, you're not gonna better snip the back. But remember, they shouldn't snip. It's just a question of taking the thread across so that you don't have to cut it off and start another one, cut it off and start another one. So you will get those long bits of thread. When you do some of the other designs, they're smaller bits, or they're puckered up. They don't have to be quite so long. Does that make sense? You'll get it when you do some of the other designs. There you go. Well done.